same actually. It's like we're getting you're a little distant, and then there's like a feedback loop, but we can live with it. Yeah, kind of. If I turn it up.
Okay.
You look good.
All right. Welcome, everybody. You guys at least a little bit okay?
Oh, we can hear you way better now.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you all for coming out tonight. Sorry for the little late start. Very excited to kick off this series. Want to just give you a couple words about kind of why we're here, how this got started, what I do, and then we'll get right into Glenn Riker and our other distinguished panelists. So 1 million bits is a shameless ripoff of 1 million cups, obviously in its name. We first started talking about this 7 or 8 months ago. My job is as managing director of Casey Legal Drive. This was an initiative that has kind of come out of the question, what do we do about the fiber being here and with this great infrastructure? And there are really 4 buckets that I work in. One of them, the one that's relevant for right here, is sort of next generation applications. We also do work in sort of economic development, entrepreneurship, and how fiber affects that. We work in digital literacy, digital inclusion, and we work in helping other communities who are adopting this infrastructure figure out and learn from all the challenges that we're going through as we figure out how to use it. So from the next generation application space, a lot of the work that I do with sort of sector-based communities. So what does this mean for education, or what does this mean for healthcare? One question that came up consistently was how do we get to the developer community? And really early on, I had meetings with a couple people to say, who are the developers in town that are really thinking about making apps? And I remember distinctly a conversation with Mike Gelfman, he gave me 5 or 6 names that were, these guys are great developers, go talk to them. And so I went and talked to some of them, and another conversation, I'm going to put you on the spot with Albert, with Albert, I'm going to have a geek night, and I was like, so he's like, you don't really need gigabit apps. Like, you don't really, there's not, gigabit to the home doesn't really do that much for what I'm doing. It's not that relevant. And I heard from like 8 people that Albert was a great developer. So clearly there was a disconnect that we need to kind of figure out how to solve, and that's how do we take all of the great development talent in Kansas City and orient problems around next generation networks in a way that is meaningful and relevant. And so that's really what this program was designed to do. I met with Das and Tom pretty early on. He said, this would be great, love to help out with this, so thank you. Ilya has been a real key partner in helping get this kicked off, and Troy Norris as well. So thanks to all of you for helping us get to where we are. We don't have a real tight agenda for tonight. We just really want to kick off the conversation and help to build sort of a regular conversation around developers to think about why next generation networks are important and what we can do here, what we should be thinking about from a development perspective that helps us really leverage the network that we have here, which is pretty exciting. I should also note, tomorrow night, I don't know how many of you are going to the Google Developer Group. How many of you are going? So, at the same time as we're starting this, the Google Developer Group is starting, which is great, and there will be some focus on Google Fiber there. The reason that we're doing 2 different things is because they also talk on Chrome, Android, and all the different Google suite of products. So we wanted to have something really focused on next-gen apps, some of which you may not even actually be able to do over Google Fiber Network. So we talk about things like software-defined networking. You need a provider that's going to allow for that kind of protocol to be on the network, and we work towards that. But we want to be able to have that discussion in a pretty full way. So I don't know, Ilya or Das, did I miss anything? Okay, so we want this to be pretty open, casual. Please ask questions. What we're going to do sort of format. Glenn Riker is going to kick us off, and he'll spend 15 or 20 minutes kind of talking about what the opportunities and challenges are. At that point, we'll probably open up for questions. And we've kind of discussed what some questions are, so if you are unsure, really just ask whatever you want. But really, my challenge to you will sort of be, if you're a person who thinks, this is cool, gigabit's cool, it's really neat to be able to download, 4K videos, but how does this really impact my life? Those are the kind of questions that we want you to ask. My hope is that the conversation becomes a little bit too technical for me to understand. I'm not the developer, but I want to make sure that there's enough meat on this where it's not just, let's sit around and talk about our ideas. It doesn't necessarily need to be about sort of the nitty-gritty of code, although it certainly can be. But I want to reach a point that is meaningful, and hopefully over time this discussion really helps us get to where we want to be as a developer community here. The other thing that I'll say, you may have picked up Gigabit Explorer's sheet on the table at the front. If you didn't, there should be some left. We did an event with Mozilla and US Ignite and Kauffman Foundation back in March called Hacking the Gigabit City, which was based on sort of the hackathon concept, but recognizing that people really weren't necessarily going to develop a next generation app start to finish in 48 hours. We spent a lot of time working with teams in advance and pairing developer teams up with be it teacher teams or hospital teams to really address sort of community problems. So we want to kind of create this cycle where we're developing against community needs, and we brought in Glenn and Will and Bill Wallace to really help bring a next-gen network mentality to that. And we're doing that again in November. So we're encouraging teams to apply now. If you're a developer that wants to join a team, please sign up. We'll find a place for you. If you've got an idea, or if you have an idea that is sparked by this conversation, please go sign up. But we are hoping within the next week or two to pull 8 to 10 teams together for a hackathon. It's going to be the first weekend of November, November 1st through 3rd. So keep that in mind as sort of a backdrop for this conversation. Our panelists, Will Marcus on the right, with the big Mozilla logo in his background, is a gigabit developer evangelist. Very apropos person to have a meeting like this for the Mozilla Foundation. He's been a great partner. He's actually originally from Lewisburg, so go Kansas City. He's going to move back soon. Marcus Komitek?
Yep, Commoner.
Is a recently joined team member of US Ignite, which is a National Science Foundation initiative to develop next generation applications. And of course, Glenn Reichert is the CTO of US Ignite. He also happened to invent something called TCP/IP. He is a recently inducted member of the Internet Hall of Fame and has been a real vocal and strong advocate for the kind of work that needs to be done and we're trying to figure out how to do here. So, Glenn, take it away.
Thank you. It was very, very kind of you. I appreciated that. I do want to congratulate Marcus. He's a US Ignite Fellow who's just joined us. This is his first day after being at our application summit in June. So thank you very much for sitting in on this, Marcus. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
And my partner in crime there from San Francisco, the person who noticed that the America's Cup race was tied 8-8 this morning, so that we followed the win of Oracle USA today, taking the America's Cup after taking a total of, what, 19 races? Is that right, Will?
It was 8-8, so that's 16.
16, 17, yeah, but then the US was behind by 2, so it was actually 19 races that there was. But Will is going to be doing some interesting things in Kansas City. Are you free to talk about those yet, Will, or is that something yet to come?
Some of that's yet to come, but we're certainly, Mozilla has been really interested in what you can do in the gigabit web, and some of these other technologies that Glenn will tell you more about. And we're really trying to build a community in Kansas City and in Chattanooga, Tennessee in particular, because, believe it or not, you all are the leading edge communities in the country in developing gigabit apps. I want to say 2 things. One, Glenn's got some unfortunate music playing over the PA system in his building right now, which is not his fault. So you're going to hear that for a while. And the other thing is, I am from Lewisburg, Kansas. I know nothing about sailing other than the fact that it's happening out in San Francisco Bay right here. It's beautiful.
All right, well, thank you very much. And you're going to see a lot more of Will because of the work that I think that they're going to be probably focusing on advanced communities. And advanced communities in this case includes Kansas City. And I really wish I were there because I don't have a gigabit. And you guys do have the possibility of signing up for that. So I really wish I were there in this particular case. Let me tell you a little bit about something that all of us here on the screen are working on, and that is making new applications and helping you make new applications in healthcare, medicine, public safety, transportation, advanced manufacturing, clean energy. That will help all Americans that are made possible by things like the gigabit network that Google is developing and deploying in Kansas City. I've got a few slides I'd like to show you. So let me see if I can share my screen here. And if I've done that correctly, I've disappeared and you now see a yellow screen with US Ignite. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Perfect, okay. So US Ignite is again about helping people and encouraging folks to generate new applications from advanced networking. And as you heard Aaron say, who contributed to some of those, on November 1st and 2nd, when we have a Gigabit Explorers event right there in that same space that you're in. So US Ignite was born in June of 2012, and this is a picture from the White House South Auditorium, where US Ignite is being announced to the press, federal agencies, reporters, folks from industry. To kick us off, John Holdren, who is the head of the Office of Science and Technology Policy in the United States, hosted the event. We had Subra Suresh, the director of the National Science Foundation. National Science Foundation has been working with Will Barkas and myself and others at Mozilla and US Ignite to help make the US Ignite program happen. Excuse me, this is Julius Janikowski, the former chair of the Federal Communications Commission. This is Larry Strickland, the head of the NTIA. They've been very active in deploying fiber through their VTOP program. And this is Todd Park. Todd Park is the Chief Technology Officer for the United States. And all of these folks showed up to get US Ignite off to a great start. So US Ignite, as I said, is a public and private partnership. We are a 501c3 charity institution. We work together with many other organizations like KC Digital Drive, Mozilla, and others that you see around the outside gray circle to help parties come together to generate next-gen applications. And the areas again, starting at the top, clean energy, going around to the right, excuse me, advanced manufacturing, public safety, transportation, healthcare, and education. So those are the kinds of apps we want to see. The goals for US Ignite are to have 60 next-generation applications over a period of 5 years. We're 1 year in, so we have about 3 years and 9 months to go get the rest of the 60 applications we need. We'd like to deploy this in at least 200 community test beds. At the moment, we're limited to test beds that have advanced capabilities, but you're one of them there in Kansas City, and to coordinate best practices among the people participating in US Ignite. The things we're after are highly programmable networks, things that act in real time, things that take advantage of the gigabit transport speed, things that are dynamic, on demand, ubiquitous, natural, and have issues such as being able to protect financial and medical information. Here's a map that shows members of US Ignite from coast to coast. It's a little bit out of date because we've had a couple of new members over the past few weeks. We've had Burlington, Vermont join, and Burlington Telecom, which has fiber throughout Burlington. And we've also had Blacksburg, who has announced they're putting in gigabit wireless in a 16 square block area of downtown. So that's very exciting to have them join. We had a very interesting US Ignite application summit, and you've not already played the video for them, have you, Aaron?
No, we did not play video.
So let me play a video of that application summit so that you can see what's happened there. I think I need to first go to the Hangout and change the sound over to the video. Come on here. Come on. Here we go. Sound and video.
We have no video. Okay. We do see Martin.
Hey Aaron, can you play that video straight off YouTube on the link I sent? Oh.
Good morning, US Ignite.
All of you are members of the US Ignite community. You have accomplished.
Hey Glenn, pause.
Your passion and your dedication, your commitment to doing what we set out to do over the past year.
Glenn,
This group of people right here are
Glenn. Echo. We can't hear you, Glenn.
You want me to restart it here or not? I'm gonna try to restart it.
Are changing the way that networking and the internet are helping make a difference in the daily lives of people and the way that we live, work, and play.
We're at the center of an ongoing societal transformation.
Hey Glenn, we can't see the video.
If you have infrastructure that's even more open than the internet, what can I do in this kind of world?
Just imagine for a moment the possibilities.
I'm going to tell you about building a gigabit web. This is about empowerment. This is about connectedness. This is about opportunity. This is about creating a bigger surface area in mind. How are gigabit networks going to empower the end user?
It's just amazing to see the various teams coming together.
We have projects that enables a radically different architecture for the web.
It sort of brings out more of the usefulness of the gigabit connections within a city. This is the biggest future of the telepresence, beyond telepresence right now. Infinite connectivity is what we're exploring.
I work on this project called the Hyperaudio Pack. What I'm trying to do here is create a new source of media and encourage media literacy, transcribing audio and video and bringing it out of this black box and so we can integrate it into the web.
We built a easy 3D web software. 3D data is huge. So with really fast internet connections, you can send that quickly and work with it very quickly. And that's what we're showing today.
This project is meant to visualize scientific data. We want to leverage new technologies, really utilize the web as a platform. Anybody with a modern browser can start to handle scientific data formats. You can use this application to create a collaborative workflow.
Our project is looking at how we can use next generation networks and video to help support people who are taking care of loved ones who have dementia, with the goal that they can live a lower stress life.
We are working on virtual reality, allowing people at different sites to remotely collaborate with each other to work on more advanced techniques for manufacturing.
We're OpenPath, peer-to-peer, browser-based communications.
Using this technology to reformulate and reconfigure education into a connected learning experience.
This is the Reliable Communication Protocol Project for Remote Process Control. The idea is to use software-defined networking to establish a reliable communication between 2 points in the internet so that I can control something remotely and not worry about losing control of it just because of a minor network glitch.
Climate Impact is a real-time analysis tool for builders, developers, and planners to actually tell stories about their proposed project in a visually immersive environment.
Connect Health is a social fitness experience online. So instead of having to go to the gym comes to you.
We can monitor the power grid to help local municipalities
and utilities advance notification of a power outage.
The best way to predict the future is to invent it.
From the early days when there was doubt, and now with 30, 40 applications, I am so proud of every single person in this room. I just can't tell you how happy I am.
This is a group that is busy inventing the future.
Those applications are really what US Ignite is all about.
Glad to see you all still there, except Glenn. And Will. Marcus, do you know where they went?
Not sure what went. Glenn, are you still on the line? Can you try messaging him? Well, I guess I can take a few minutes while we're resolving this. I can tell everybody if you come to our website, us-ignite.org, we do have a lot of the videos and information from the US Ignite Summit. It was a really great opportunity to be able to see all the applications. Many of the people who came to the conference did full demos, and you were able to see how these applications are actually utilizing the next generation networks. And it's very exciting to actually see how the demos work. So I encourage everybody to kind of come online and read the materials and see what's already being done in the Sphere, so that you can use that type of information, incorporate that into your own applications that you start developing.
So, thank you, Marcus. Yeah, it's a great, they've been a great partner and a great resource for us. While we're waiting for Glenn and Will to come back, and we've gotten a little bit,
There, that works.
all right.
Yes, now you can hear me.
Hey, Glenn, we've gotten through the video.
So I'm trying to figure out why you couldn't hear me before. But anyway, you can hear me right now. We're going to play more music, but I can go on. So can you see the slide that has a picture of the summit on it?
No, just black.
You're seeing just black. All right, let me try one more time here.
I love technology.
I do too. So I'm going to try this, and then try that. Now can you see it?
Yep, perfect.
All right. Okay, so we're up to having 28 applications we demonstrated at the summit. You saw many of them in that video, 15 industry partners, and 26 cities and communities. We want you to be a part of this. Our relationships include Mozilla, that I talked about. We work with Internet2, the Open Networking Foundation, the Global Environment for Network Innovation, and the Future Internet Architectures Group. So this is what I really wanted to get to the meat of today for you folks and developers. These are the kinds of things that, working on an advanced network, you can do and provide for your applications that you couldn't otherwise provide. Take a look at the 3 orange circles in the center. At the lower left, you see end user gigabit. This is what you now have, or being installed in Kansas City, and it enables a number of applications. You'll see some applications around the words end user gigabit that are enabled by that particular technology. You can also have a local cloud that is a local server that responds very quickly and very responsively to needs. And you can see that there are some applications that are enabled by that local cloud, which are inside that local cloud circle. And then in this intersection between the two of them at the bottom, there are even more applications that depend on both having the local server and having the end user gigabit. The third circle here at the top is about software-defined networking and network function virtualization. That's the idea that instead of just dealing with an internet that delivers packets, you can actually insert programmability into the network so that it does things that it might not otherwise do. And I'll give some examples of that as we go along. Network function virtualization allows your application to have its own network that you request from a pool of networking resources, but it looks like the network has been virtualized Just like a virtual server virtualizes a server environment. So you have a directly controllable network environment where you can control the addressing, you can control the connectivity. Around the outside, you see some of the things that you can do that are pretty difficult on today's internet. The first one I want to talk about is at the bottom left, big data. In the big data case, big data has been, until now, handled in an aggregated fashion in remote data centers. But with gigabit networking, you can have lots of sensors, see the world from many different angles, or hear it from many different angles, or smell it from different angles, or be able to detect vibrations from many different angles, and or cameras that could generate big data locally and be fused together so that you can see things that you couldn't see from any one vantage point. So imagine that you are at a zoo and would like to see an animal from all different directions at the same time, so that the people who are taking a virtual field trip to the zoo can see the parts of the animal that they couldn't see if they were just looking at it from behind a fence on one side of the cage. So imagine what you can do with bringing together lots of cameras, lots of sensors to provide experiences and immersion that you couldn't provide otherwise. Think about custom real-time visualizations based on big data. I'm going to try to play another video. We'll see if that works. And if so, we'll see some of those. On the left-hand side of the slide, you see some of the applications that use big data in the particular case of our June summit. So, for example, Plan IT Impact, which is a Kansas City effort, and Aaron can tell you much more about, takes data about the topography, the geospatial characteristics, and applies it so that you can see what would happen in case of stormwater runoff, or water tables, or excessive heat, or be able to understand energy usage based on geospatial concepts. So all these things use big data. And using big data is one characteristic of the kinds of advanced apps that you can do when you've got a lot of data from different sensors, and particularly if you have a local cloud that you can process those with. Second thing is that software-defined networking can provide bandwidth on demand. We are used to measuring service provisioning and commitment in months or years. You'll go to a carrier, you'll say, dear AT&T, dear Verizon, dear Comcast, whoever, and say, I'd like a new private network for my company, and they'll say, fine, we can turn that up in 6 to 8 weeks, and you'll need to make a 2 to 3 year commitment. The new world is that your application, if you're sitting there, the application you write, can ask for a network to be provisioned for your application instance. Each instance can have its own network, or you could have all of the instances of your application running in a network just for that application. The way that you do this is that there is a definition called an RSpec. It's an XML-like specification. You hand this to a network controller, which then goes and manages to allocate things like VLANs and OpenFlow flows to create what you need and provide the connectivity that you've specified in this RSpec. And there are graphical tools to help generate the RSpecs, or you can generate them programmatically if that's better for your particular application. It's great for the carriers because it's a new source of incremental revenue. Right now they're worried that although the usage of networking is going up by consumers and businesses alike, the only thing they have to limit it is the speed of the pipe. And now they'll be able to take a look at these additional networks that they are providing on demand. So this is what I hope I get a lot of questions on. We had 3 examples in the June summit. I hope that you will develop some more on November 1st and 2nd and the weeks leading up to that. In the case of reliable process control, they wanted to be able to have a very reliable link to a remote robot, essentially, that was in this case a 3D printer. And to do that, they had redundant paths defined through the network. They said in their RSpec, please give me 2 physically diverse paths. Please duplicate all my packets to go over both paths. And please make sure that both packets arrive each time, delivering the first to arrive as soon as it arrives. That reduces the latency in the network by delivering the first packet that arrives. And if a packet over one path consistently doesn't arrive, the network says, oh, you must have a failure, a hiccup, a problem over that path, and asks for yet a third path to be created so that there are always 2 active paths. So this is a new kind of thing you can't do on today's internet. Make sure that you have reliable delivery without hiccup by being able to have this reliable process control that you specify 2 independent paths through the network and ask for your packets to be duplicated and then double checked on the other end. This is a function you can't ask today's network to do, but you certainly can do using software-defined networking. And all the major vendors are now providing hardware, software, and controllers that can help you do that. And we'd be glad to work with you, and Will Vargas and Mozilla have a number of tutorials that they can use to help you understand how you can program those things into the network. Or maybe it's just a proprietary network you want to create for your application. That can be created statically with graphical tools, and then your application can run on its own private network. Tailorable nets. Right now we have a tragedy in the commons, at least in my house. When all of my devices try uploading at the same time, the router decides, oh, he's violating his upstream bandwidth limit and throws away whichever packets to come next, as opposed to the packets I wish it would throw away if I was running over my limit. So I end up with perhaps my most important packets being discarded and low priority packets getting through because I have no control over that now. But in this new world with software-defined networking, the network service can specify what bandwidth it should be able to get, what kind of service it should be able to get. So for example, on a per flow basis, it could say, I want the lowest latency circuit, don't queue anything, throw my packet away rather than queuing it. I need the following flow rate. That would be one kind of specification you use for audio or video. A different thing that you could do is say, hey, I'm doing a backup. I'm running Carbonite or Mozy. And I want you to queue all my packets. I don't care how long it takes them to get there. I just want them to all get there sooner or later. And I don't want to pay much money for it. So those are 2 different kinds of services that in software-defined networking, you can specify what kind of handling you want out of your virtual network. Again, it's a virtual network created out of the physical network with the properties that you would like. And the technologies to do this are available in OpenFlow and in Genie, and it's available today that you can go and run on the network there in Kansas City. Zero hiccup reliability. The TCP and IP protocols are designed to recover from errors, but there's often a timing hiccup. You notice that things went away for a while, things froze for a while. It went into buffering for a little while. It came back, it was able to recover, but there was a hiccup. We'd like to see networks that have zero hiccup reliability so they can be used for things like remote surgery, reliable process control of remote drones or remote 3D printers or remote robots. And there's several techniques that can be used. Dedicated resources can be allocated, dedicated virtual resources. You can send redundant data, as I described, for reliable process control. You can ask the network to insert forward error correction so as to be able to correct for certain kinds of errors that might be frequent on your network. You can go do hop-by-hop retry. And probably the ultimate answer is don't send it so far. Keep it all local and keep it on a local server so that you're not dependent on the reliability of the longer distance network. Inherent security. You know all about the kinds of security issues we have on today's internet. Google Fiber is not immune to these things. DNS attacks, routing attacks, intercept of information, man-in-the-middle attacks, impersonation, denial of service. All of these are possible on today's network because they're all sharing the same physical network. In the case of network function virtualization, you can have a separate slice is the term normally used, or a virtual network on a per application or even a per application instance basis. And you can dedicate resources to that virtual slice so that you're guaranteed that you will be able to have service even if someone is trying to do a denial of service attack in some other slice. Your slice will still be okay. Because applications are isolated in slices, there's no such thing as a DNS attack because you have your own DNS. Routing attacks are impossible because you have your own routing within your own virtual network. Playing man in the middle, no can do because you can't spoof the address and get in a network that you haven't been allocated into. So resources can be allocated through network function virtualization by slice or by virtual network. And if you would like to keep private information private, that's a great way to do it. Metalite here, the first one listed on the left, is an example where in a hospital scenario, they're using the same physical wireless network, but there are three sub-networks on that, three virtual networks. One is for medical data. The medical data network is protected from everyone else being able to access it. The second one is an administrative network that people who work for the hospital can access, and is protected from a third virtual network, which is a public network. And at our June event, we showed that even with a denial of service attack being mounted in the public network, that the traffic continued to flow smoothly and evenly on the administrative network and on the medical record network, and that the medical records could not be accessed from either the administrative or the public networks. That's because through network function virtualization, three independent and independently provisioned in the sense of giving them dedicated. Sorry about the announcements there in the background. So the networks were each able to transport their own data independently, and it's great for medical data protection. And finally, if you like something that is high performance computing scale, and you'd like to do something like real-time user-guided exploration of multidimensional spaces, you'd like to, for example, take somebody's DNA, blow it up, allow them to go and look through it, understand what's in their own DNA, you could do that. You could go and take simulations of approaching weather and help folks understand how the winds are going to work, why the winds reverse in case of a hurricane, anything like that where you can model it and visualize it on a high performance scale. The local rack can assist you to do that. And if the local rack you have, the local servers are not up to the job because you have a very complex thing, there are capabilities to federate the rack in Kansas City with racks in nearby cities so that you can handle larger problems. So that can be very impressive. Sizzle is an example of one of those apps you see on the left. Sizzle is an app that runs on a local server so that when people manipulate on their finger on the iPad, the local server transmits a new 3D model of what the user should see in high speed, uses the gigabit, the high speed, uses the server to generate the 3D images. And the fact it's a local server means that as the person moves their finger on the iPad screen, the model changes underneath it very smoothly, even though it's a very complex model. So things that an iPad would not be normally powerful enough to do, might take a gamer engine or something more powerfully, can be handled by teaming up a server that's local together with gigabit delivery of that video so that you can see what's happening here. So those 6 things are kind of the things that we can do using the things inside the circles to make things happen. Real-time interaction with objects and models like Sizzle are really aided by all of these. If you take a look at that green circle, I call it the real-time interaction low latency circle. Take a look at end user gigabit. On the circle it says there's a higher bit rate. Because there's a higher bit rate, even if you're not moving a gigabit per second of information, what information you are moving gets there sooner because it's running over a faster link, and the time between the first bit and the last bit on the network is a lot smaller. So the gigabit is of substantial use even if you're not sending data that's big, because it helps to reduce the latency. For video, try not compressing it. Compressing takes time. And you can have much more natural video conferences if the video conference data is not compressed. When you don't compress and you have gigabit rates, you can use optical switching with software-defined networking. And there are now two vendors, Ciena and ADDA, who are demonstrating optical switching based on software-defined networking controllers. If you've got something for which the latency has to be so low that optical switching is the right thing, I'd be, for one, delighted to help make some of that equipment appear in Kansas City so you can have that low latency.
Hey, Glenn.
Software, yeah.
Can I interrupt for a second?
You sure can.
I want to get, because I know that we've got, we're running a little bit behind where we were, and I think there's some people that may have questions. I don't know for sure how much we've done left, but I want to take time to see if there are any questions about all of the stuff that you've just gone over.
Look, Aaron, if you don't mind, let me try to show one other video. If it doesn't work, I will give up right away and we won't do it, but it will give you an idea of the kind of thing that I think we'd like to be trying to do. Let me see if I can play this quickly for you. If it doesn't work, just talk back in the air and tell me it's not working, and I'll give up on it. But just give me 1 second here to see if I can play this very short video for you.
Right now we interact with computers in a very unnatural sort of 2D way. And we're trying to create these 3D objects using a variety of 2D tools. And it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel normal the way you should do things. So we started playing around with the idea and using a few of the things that are available out there, such as the Leap Motion and Siemens NX, which is what we use to design the rocket. And we wrote some code to integrate the two. And we started off with what you see here, which is a wireframe of the Merlin rocket engine. And what I can do is I can go grab it, and I can rotate it in multiple dimensions. And then what I can do is I can put another hand in there, and I can zoom. Oh, I can zoom in and out on the wireframe. And then I can also translate it. So I can move it around the screen, and then zoom and translate. And this is what we started off with a few months ago. And you can also spin it, and then catch it. So this is kind of a fun way to interface with what is really a very complex model. Now we'll go from this to what we're able to advance to a few weeks after the wireframe, which is to actually use a full 3D CAD model of the engine. So here what you see is the actual interaction with the CAD software manipulating the real 3D model of the Merlin engine just using hand gestures. If you can just go in there and do what you need to do, just understanding the fundamentals of how the thing should work, as opposed to figure out how to make the computer make it work, then you can achieve a lot more in a much shorter period of time. So then we went to a 3D projection. We started off with the kind of 3D projection that you're familiar with in the movies, where you use 3D glasses. We also did a freestanding glass projection, which is what the sort of technology that was used in the Iron Man movies. And then finally we used the Oculus Rift, which is immersive virtual reality that actually tracks your head position, and you really are moving around the object. It feels like it's right there in front of you. Now let's use this for an actual component of the rocket, which is a cryogenic valve housing. You can really apply your intuition and take something from your mind to a physical object with far greater ease than we currently do. Now that we've gotten the object out of our head and into the computer, how to get it out of the computer and into reality. So we're actually going to print this with a 3D laser metal printer. So the way that the 3D printer works is it lays down fine particles of either titanium or Inconel, and then it goes over with a laser and melts those tiny particles onto the prior layer. So it builds it up, like just layer by layer. So I believe we're on the verge of a major breakthrough in design and manufacturing, in being able to take the concept of something from your mind, translate that into a 3D object really intuitively on the computer, and then take that virtual 3D object and be able to make it real just by printing it. So it's going to revolutionize design and manufacturing in the 21st century.
Okay, so we can take some questions.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Let's give that hand to Glenn. So we've got, when we originally conceived this, we had, well, we've got a couple different content formats that we'll get into some other time, but there are a few people that we had talked about having as a sort of panel. Das, Pete Penny, who is a computer science professor at UMKC, Albert Kong, who's a developer at One Louder, it's still called One Louder? Insight Media now, and Joel Tepley at iVerify. So wanted to have some local people who are working in this area. I mean, Das went out to the US Ignite Developer Summit in San Leandro in February and got to interact with people there. Deep, I first met probably 10 months ago. He actually submitted an application for US Ignite and was working a lot in networking. So I think it's great to tap our local resources who are in this community. Albert, I know you've got to leave soon, so I'm curious what, because I picked on you earlier, and you're kind of like, yeah, I mean, it's cool, but what do I do? And maybe I mischaracterized that, so feel free to comment on that. But let's get your reaction first in terms of, was this helpful? Does this explain more? What questions do you have coming out of here are some of the opportunities of what networking is?
I guess to clarify.
And feel free to be, blunt and rude.
I just want to clarify, I think Gigabit is a great thing that we have to see, and there's a lot of opportunities out there. But I just clarify that I really see the.
Is that mic on?
The green light is on. Thank you.
I turned everything off.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Should be good. And that's.
Yo.
Oh, I just like to, I guess, clarify my earlier statement about not seeing an immediate need for Gigabit. That was more specific to homes. I think Gigabit opens many doors. Obviously, for institutions, the medical environment, anything related to big data. And so far, all the videos and a lot of the things that we've seen kind of confirm, I guess, the fact that I had when it first released, a year ago. So that's kind of where that's coming from.
So it's a great question, or a great, yeah. And I didn't mean to cut you off. So Glenn, Gigabit to homes, the stuff that you just showed us isn't really applicable.
Well, I would say it absolutely is applicable because we want folks to be able to, in their homes, be able to have educational value from 3D modeling.
Tonight's PA test. Sorry, we completed.
Wow, that's good news. They've completed the testing.
Are you still there?
I am. I was just trying to get rid of some of the other announcements here. But I think it's entirely applicable to what people can do in their homes, to have medical delivery to their homes, to be able to get uncompressed video back to a doctor's office so they don't have to show up, or so they can do a checkup or see what's been happening. All those things are home-based applications, especially in education and healthcare, that these kinds of technologies can help with. For example, you've got some kind of a problem with your heart, the doctor could go and show you in a 3D model of your heart exactly what's going wrong so that you can better understand what's happening and be better motivated to follow your treatment regimen, for example.
Albert, do you find that persuasive?
I think that's a really valid point, and I love that application, absolutely. I guess, what could you do with 100 megabits per second in that scenario? Would that be fast enough for a lot of video? For instance, like the initial instinct is to have better video streaming or better data downloads, but at some point, most home users will not know the difference, unfortunately. I mean, for us, we can definitely see that, but for most home users, the mass audience, I don't know if that's immediately impactful. But eventually it will be, just immediately. My time horizon, the question is purpose, in the near future.
No, and I don't intend to put you on the defense at all, and I think you're asking great questions, and you're asking questions that everyone else asks, and that come up every day, and that I think are that's really the kind of question that I don't think is being answered in a great way. So that's kind of the point of this group.
I do think that video doesn't take that much bandwidth if you can compress it first, but if you don't have time or the expensive equipment to compress it well, such as you're trying to send high definition video from your home upstream, and you're trying to do it with low latency, it really does require a lot of bandwidth. It requires somewhere between 300 and 500 megabits we've discovered in experimental tests so far.
Another question in the back from Matthew Marcus. The Marcus.
I'm just curious, right now, per Google Fiber's terms and conditions, you cannot have a server on the network. I'm curious to know how that might affect people trying to develop gigabit applications without those accessibilities.
So good question. I think that what the spirit of that is that they don't want to see servers on the home end of the circuits. But I think that a number of us would be willing to go to bat with Google to be able to put servers at the head-end facilities, which is where you really like them for the kinds of local server apps and the virtualized server apps I was talking about.
Yeah, and I would. Who else wants a mic? Would say also, yeah. I mean, every ISP restricts server usage. I think, and there were a couple of good pieces that came out. A big flak was made about the server thing. I don't know, a month or two ago. ISPs just aren't equipped to deal with the language of what the internet of the future looks like. So people talk about servers because there's this concern kind of based on what people do with the internet now. I don't think anyone really thought it through. So they just kind of rip off the old language and they keep using it. But I think a lot of the forward-looking stuff that we're talking about is going to be fine. I don't know anyone who, I was talking to a guy yesterday who put a bunch of Minecraft servers in somebody's apartment that had gotten Google Fiber. Did they say anything? No. So I haven't heard any examples. Has anyone heard any examples of them shutting someone down for serving too much from their home connection? Dawson?
How many folks in the room have Google Fiber already?
Good question. Who has Google Fiber?
You lucky guys.
You lucky bastards.
Coming back to Albert's discussion about video, a lot of what we do at iVerify involves dealing with very high quality video APIs. And for example, for us, having high bandwidth at the home or at the office would mean that we would be able to transmit in real time 1080p video APIs as we're taking them frame by frame at a very fast frame rate and be able to process that
Keith Mehdi. Hello, everyone. I was going to say that a lot of video-oriented applications will become really big in the gigabit space. For example, home monitoring type stuff will become very, very big. Sort of a thing, what's going on, pushing it. In a sense, gigabit, you can think about it oriented towards having a lot of high intensity, high data rate like this. And what I can see happening is that as the network opens up in terms of the gigabit rate available to the end user, the applications are going to start pushing in terms of having better and better quality video. Then you don't want to compress and decompress, but that's the processing part, processing delay and whatnot. So we're going to try to do it, send it raw and whatnot. I even know of application situations right now, what is in the wireless domain, it is sort of doing what is called a C-RAN. It is like trying to do data center where you actually, instead of all the devices that you have your handheld doing something that you are trying to push some feature on it from the provider or operator, what you do is that, and because of the current infrastructure, a lot of them do some stuff at the base station and kind of hodgepodge manner. But if the quality and the data rate gets better, what happens is you can push all of them to a data center to process it and actually give a better quick turnaround feature to the end user. Even for the folks who are using handheld devices, because they're coming on 4G data and whatnot, which is getting gigabit pretty soon anyway. So if you put that, put the fiber right next to it, you can push everything there instead of now putting it in parts, but not being able to take full advantage of. Partly because it needs people who are experts to be able to handle and customize things, with big data processing and stuff like that. That's you cannot just do it on a base station, and if you have 50 base stations in the Kansas City area, you're not going to push something there, So I can see from that perspective to the end user with handheld devices, requiring the video and sort of a video-oriented monitoring or the interactive stuff with groups and whatnot, picking up in terms of
So maybe we can talk a minute about uncompressed video. I mean, how many people know what the value of uncompressed video is? No, good question. No, on the one hand, I think that 1080p or 4K video streams at over a gig per second if it's uncompressed, but you also get Netflix at like 5 megs a second, and it's fine to sit there and watch TV in your home. So, I think one of it's kind of a practical question that I hear sometimes is, okay, yeah, uncompressed video takes up a lot of bandwidth at really high definitions, but who cares? Like, we do it fine right now. How many people have that question?
I don't see any reason.
This one, I hope so. I don't know.
I got it, okay. Just wasn't pressing hard enough. So, the point of doing uncompressed video is to take the overhead off of the processor on the computer for the user in the server. But, technology thus far has accelerated so fast that adding that overhead on the server hasn't been that detrimental. We're already doing it a lot. Just because we have all this bandwidth now, I don't see any reason to just uncompress it. We've already got all that technology in place. It's very efficient, and processes are just going to get better. Up to a point. I know we're sort of reaching ahead on that, but the interesting thing I saw on this slide was the idea of having two parallel data delivery systems and being like, okay, well, if this particular channel is dropping packets, now I have reliable connection, so I don't have glitches in my video. I think you can still keep the compression methods, but now have several pipelines in series delivering that. And I think that's incredibly useful, especially for the home user, because now you're going to be watching your video, you're not going to get the glitches, you're not going to get the hiccups, and if you're doing video conference calls. My question to US Ignite One of the things you guys highlighted was the concept of having a lot more sensors and a lot more data, right? So now we've opened it up to where we can send data back to the server. We can give companies or doctors or whoever more information regarding the user and what they're doing. Have you guys looked into supporting hardware, right? I mean, more sensors, more things in the home, having more like Kinect, something like a Kinect, an Xbox Kinect, to harness that data and give the people developing the applications more information to utilize in their services. Is that something you guys have created an initiative for?
Indeed, and maybe, Will, you want to, well, let me describe something first. First of all, on the uncompressed video, yes, there is the issue of do you have enough GPU cycles or whatever to do the compression, but also how long does that take? And what we found on the uncompressed video is that you can actually finish each other's sentences. We were actually testing some uncompressed video from Ohio to Utah, and we were talking about this over the video conference, and I accidentally finished somebody else's sentence and said, wait a minute, this does not happen in a video conference. And the reason is that the time delay, even if it's only 50 or 100 milliseconds, actually affects the way that people talk to each other and work with each other over video. So whether or not the compression takes, you have the capability of doing it, you don't want to spend time doing it. And you can make things that are much more natural. The gaming, the collaboration can be much more natural. So I just wanted to mention that on the example of the uncompressed video. On Kinect, we actually had a couple of examples of using the Kinect box at the application summit. I'll ask Will in a moment to talk about the Linux Labs example of how they use the Kinect box. But one of them that we had was a case where a Kinect box watches seniors in their homes, detects their patterns, sees how fast they walk, and if their walking gait changes or if their normal habits change, alerts caregivers that something might be going on and they should be checked up on. So that's done by doing real-time processing off of Kinect data. Do you want to, Will, maybe tell them about the Linux Lab example?
Before you do that, Will, does anyone need a beer? Who doesn't want to get up and be rude? I'll get you one.
I do.
Over here, over here.
Just put it in that pneumatic tube, the internet.
Yeah, so even a gigabit isn't enough for a beer.
That's right, not yet. There were a couple examples from, one of them actually from the KC Hackfest in March, Darren mentioned, the team, just moving around large 3D data sets. I think you actually saw them in the US Ignite video that you played earlier. Really complex models are huge, and when you're, as we're starting to look at things like, really making the matrix, we're going to need to be moving large amounts of data around. They use the Kinect sensor to do their scan. But the other example is the Engage 3D team that uses a Kinect sensor to essentially do 3D video conferencing. And it's not even really video, because they're streaming, point clouds at some rate, 30 clouds per second or whatever, it's not frames, but it's easy to go above a gig. I think part of this whole thing though is getting past trying to do the math and saying, what can we use 1,000 megabits per second for, and just saying, what do I do if I'm not even thinking about it? If it's an abundant bandwidth world, as opposed to trying to squeeze everything out of the, compression or with this or that.
And the other thing I say is, forget trying to fill up a gigabit pipe. The fact that the gigabit pipe gets even small things there quicker counts when you're trying to do real-time, real interactive stuff.
Another point of the hardware question, and I'm sorry that I missed the answer and started to cover, but we have looked at doing a Google Glass track, a Leap Motion track. I don't know if we've done anything for the Kinect for our event in November. I'm waiting to hear back from the Leap Motion guys. Their developers also are uncertain. I think that's a great question. And if, I don't know if CandyCam has looked at anything in this, but I think that's, I would love to find ideas here, where you've got technology, you've got hardware. So for you on the other end, Chad, do you want to give a quick description of what CandyCam does?
Yeah, can you provide the hardware? Bring your own hardware. BYOH.
We're currently developing, it's a platform for moving cameras around a room, three-dimensionally in a room, dynamically. We're trying to make it camera agnostic, so whatever device you're using to capture the data, whether that's a DSLR or a GoPro or a high-end RED camera, we're trying to make an interface where you can essentially plop that on there and be able to, using an iPad or a controller, or we're making an open framework for the control system for it, but it's merely a platform that's suspended, so it's not like a quadcopter, but it gives you sort of the capabilities that a quadcopter has. So you can bring it into a space like this and not interrupt people with loud fans and noises trying to levitate it, but move it around the room and capture what's going on and have that freedom. And so, this definitely opens up opportunities to, at least in a world where we have like a large pipeline in the wireless industry, to be able to push that data out maybe in real time, who knows? I know some of the problems we run into are, the feedback from the camera, being that it's remote, there's a delay, there's a latency there, and being able to emulate that in a system like we're doing versus what's already out there. They're using fiber optics in a lot of suspended systems so that they can give real-time information back. But there are potentially applications. We haven't necessarily looked at them yet because it's not really a home use kind of item, at least at the price point we're at right now. As technology gets a little cheaper, we might be able to bring this into a mass consumer market, but it's still geared towards what we call prosumers, basically people that are already spending a lot of money on higher-end systems to move their cameras around and create dynamic shots. There's potentially opportunities there, but it'll be interesting to see what develops and what kind of programs emerge out of something like US Ignite.
So that's really fascinating. I hope you bring it on November 1st and 2nd, and who knows what that could be used for. You could do remote dermatology exams by moving the camera around the person to go take a look at this mole or that mole or something to get a better look at what's going on. There's just all kinds of things that you can imagine that this would be good for.
Yeah, Glenn, I would add, sitting here, unable to move around, I still kind of feel like I'm telepresent, a little bit. I've never been in that room before, so that helps. But if I could move around the room, that would make me feel like I was there, And so.
And believe me, if Will was there, he'd be walking around the room. So I totally get it. That makes sense with him. I want to let you know that my son, doing what I do, has gone and constructed a 2D version of that. So he goes and has his DSLR and video recording and moves it up and down a track and tilts it and pans it and so forth and produces interesting videos.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and talk about how I can use this right away. My name is Joel. I do a lot of work with augmented reality, and a lot of the problems, it's augmented reality on mobile devices like the iPad or the iPhone. A lot of these algorithms I'm having to run in the GPU, and it's limited as to how much can actually execute there. So something with low latency, I could offshoot some of these algorithms off to a server and have it process. For instance, I have an application that allows you to see what the paint colors from like Sherwin-Williams would look like on your own walls in real time. The issue is I need to get a 3D representation of the walls, the structure of their home. And in order to do that, it would require a lot of computing resources to do some clustering algorithms, do some parallax analysis and whatnot. And I'm already taxed just doing the overlays of the paint or the flooring or whatever else I'm doing on the mobile device, using the GPU for what it really shouldn't be used for, just using shaders and whatnot. And I would like to use CUDA or OpenCL, some of these other things off on the server. And if the latency is really, really low, the user wouldn't really know the difference. So I see the mobile device as a portal to a supercomputer, essentially. And I think this could solve a lot of the problems that I'm looking at. Every new device that comes out, it gets a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. And I think that's what this technology would bring. It's underemphasized. I think we talk more about video and things like that when we should be talking about this portal to supercomputing off in the back end.
Excellent point. Couldn't agree more. I think that there's 100 applications that could be built on that particular model.
So to realize something like that, what do we need to do? And be for you, Linda, that could be for you, Joel. I mean, like, so we've got, I don't know how many homes right now that have, you know, gig connection to the home, and Glenn's talked about doing sort of a distributed supercomputer. I mean, say we've got 5,000, you know, people that have gigabit fiber in their home, so one option would be, if you can figure out how to do that. I mean, I don't know, and I'm working sort of separately on figuring out what their peering relationships are and how we can have access to local data center space, or does UMKC have any gaming racks yet?
We are supposed to get very soon.
Okay.
So this is actually kind of a good lead into the question I had. A lot of kind of the back and forth here is a network problem, right? There aren't enough people at the end, consumer facing, and maybe paired with enough high-speed infrastructure to be able to deliver on a lot of the things that we're talking about. And so I saw in your presentation there was 200 test communities. Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to make kind of, not the business case, but at least a platform where you can experiment with and actually give a user base to actually see how these things work in the real world? And I think a lot of the questions about does it make sense right now, or is how many people actually have it, you know, the value of the network, is it actually there to try to build an application on? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, so it turns out there are about 25 cities participating in US Ignite right now. So Burlington, Vermont, Burlington Telephone has the entire city wired up with fiber. Provo, Utah is already wired with fiber. They had a network there that Google bought, so there's already an operational fiber network there. Chattanooga, Tennessee has 170,000 homes and small businesses wired up on their fiber, and they've just lowered the price of their gigabit to $69.99 for some reason that you guys probably had a lot to do with, or at least Google had a lot to do with there in Kansas City. And you know, I could go on. Lafayette, Louisiana, they have a utility system where they've got fiber available to the homes of Lafayette, Louisiana. We've got West Valley in Utah. Sure West has fiber to homes in Sacramento and outside of Kansas City there. So there actually are a number of communities on which we can try out these pipes to the supercomputers and be able to remote things. And also, another advantage of using the gigabit pipe to remote the power to a remote server is that remote server can then be shared among many people. You don't have to have it dedicated to you. And that reduces the overall cost quite a bit. So I think there actually are a lot of places, but we're looking to Kansas City, KC Digital Divide, Mozilla, and others to kind of really make it happen in Kansas City first, and really look upon you guys as the potential pioneers for making that happen, and then generating some national publicity over all of that.
I have a question. Do you see the fiber network on the ground as being the initial groundwork to a larger satellite-based microwave or millimeter wave infrastructure that would then allow everything to move along the ground in a more streamlined fashion? And then second, what do you do if you're WinZip?
What do you do with your WinZip? If you offer your services for free or something? I don't know. But I don't see satellite as replacing this because there simply isn't enough electromagnetic spectrum that you can point accurately enough to be able to do spatial reuse, to give us the kind of bandwidth for the data that we need. I will say, however, that Wi-Fi 802.11ac, gigabit wireless with Wi-Fi, is something that if enough homes had it, you could essentially have the same sort of arrangement where you would hop from Wi-Fi to Wi-Fi, just like you change cellular towers, and we might have that kind of infrastructure as a successor to cell-based Wi-Fi, or in addition to, probably.
I don't think you understood where I was going. Was more in relation to a global distribution, being able to rely on the ability to transmit to remote areas, even to access the gigabit system in the fiber network is almost a torrent type system that could then power that distribution to remote areas more efficiently.
I understand. I would love to see that. I think that if we develop some compelling applications, it will cause people to think more deeply about getting those technologies more deeply embedded.
Bob on Twitter, one of the few people tweeting out here, but I'm probably one of the few people in the room that remembers when microwaves were a novelty. You know, they were $1,000, $1,500. 3D printers are a novelty right now, but in the future they may not be. And imagine a day when 3D printers are as common in a home as microwaves, and you want that iPhone case, you hit buy, it sends that blueprint to you at gigabit speeds, and it makes that thing in your house. We can't envision the applications right now because we can't envision the applications. I tweeted out the Gigabit City report that was done here by Brain Zooming and Social Media Club. Aaron Deacon was forefront of making that happen. We talked about taking master electricians, master plumbers, putting GoPros on them, not GoPros at the time, they didn't exist, but putting cameras on them, having them film what they do, and then having a video equivalent of Wikipedia. So somebody walks in and goes, man, that garbage disposal's there, it's a right angle, it's in the corner, I don't know how to do it. Bam, they look at that with Google Glass, they see the video, oh, I need that kind of wrench. It's the things that we can't even envision right now that we'll be able to do. And the last thing is, as a home user, I'm supposed to be getting 10 to 20 meg from Time Warner, but at night I don't. I get a lot less than my neighbor. Well, if the cap's higher when it's degraded, the degraded thing is higher, and that's the value I see at the
So let me offer a devil's advocate. I mean, to print out your iPhone cover, do you need a gig? Or this kind of, what's the value of this networking to print out your iPhone cover?
Hey, Aaron, one of the interesting things is that part of the cost of the printer is in the feedback loop control that goes and calibrates the nozzle to go and be in exactly the right place. And one of the things they've shown in Kettering University is if you put a cheap camera chip, but a high-def camera chip on the 3D printer, you can then do all of the calibration remotely using a remote computer and don't have to build the costume of the 3D printer. And they think they might be able to reduce the cost of the 3D printer by about 40% by not having to have that be local all the time. So there's an example where the gigabit would be used to make the 3D printer less expensive and make it work well.
We've got another question in the back, but I want to know if there are other challenges, because I mean, I don't disagree with anything you said, but I also don't know that much about this. So I hear people say stuff like that, and then somebody else be like, yeah, but no, because this. So if anyone has that, if anyone wants to challenge Bob.
Actually, I wanted to comment on the challenges. With the higher bandwidth, and that means that I need to existing applications and open the door for new applications, but the challenges to get on the network monitoring and management by just in order to look at what's going on in the network, it's going to be a lot more data and analyzing those can be more difficult and useful. So I had a question whether there was an experience of a difficulty managing, monitoring the high-bandwidth networks.
And to me, a related question is, particularly in our case, we don't own the network. We don't really have access to the network. The network is pretty controlled by Google. So when we talk about things like software-defined networking, what are our options? Is that kind of what you're asking?
Even with software-defined networking, just the amount of data we have to look at the number of applications. If you want to look at the detailed information, like I get daily information, a lot more data.
So you're worried that gigabit fiber is not enough to deal with the amount of data that you're going to have?
Yeah, out of the gigabit link, the amount of data that has to be captured, monitored, and managed is going to be.
This is an interesting question. Len?
So I didn't hear the question completely. Could you repeat it, Aaron?
I'll try. I think the question was that a gigabit, that to do the kinds of things we're talking about, and to manage the networking the way we're talking about, you've got to take in and analyze so much data that we may run out of room on a gig network because you not only are collecting that much data, but then you're analyzing and processing on the back. Is that?
So there's certainly applications that today take 10 or even 100 gigabit networks in order to be able to work with. For example, analyzing human genomes is more than a gigabit speed operation. So I think that classical problem exists, but I'd rather focus on the things that are within grasp. There's a whole bunch of things a gigabit can do perfectly well, but we haven't even tried yet. We should be trying.
And I would like to say, I think it's really exciting to be in a room where the complaint is the gigabit's not enough. There's all this stuff that I want to do, because that's counter to the objection that I usually hear. So that's good.
So yeah, I did want to brush upon that software-defined network and the network function virtualization that you mentioned. Are there any protocols out there right now for this kind of thing? And because application developers, you guys are great, you develop so much stuff, but you push it out so quick, it's really hard to make everything secure. And exactly what Glenn brushed upon, being able to have security by zoning off your network. So it's really an awesome idea being able to have like a private peer-to-peer network and set this up just for use within your application for sharing it. So what protocols are there right now, or what's on the horizon and that we can do this with?
Sure, let me divide it into two camps. One is we could go and part of the word statically create for your application an NFV logical network. And then you would do nothing different except that you would be in your own private play box, and you would know that, and you'd be able to maybe be able to send protected health information over that because you know you're in your own protected play box. So that's kind of done as an outside shell around your application that you're going to write. That works fine. We can do that today. We'd be glad to do that on November 1st and 2nd. There's a graphical interface to set that up. There's also a programmable way where you can go and send instructions to the network. And the protocol for that is called OpenFlow, OpenFlow. If you go to openflow.org, or you Google OpenFlow, you'll get a gazillion hits. It is the hot new thing in network programming. And there's an OpenFlow Network Foundation. We're actually having a joint meeting with them on October 8th because they're standardizing this new kind of NFV SDN world using the OpenFlow standards. And OpenFlow is not very complex. It's a rather simple engine. You load OpenFlow rules, and this is a developer crowd, so let me just tell you quickly what goes on, is that you first have a match part. The match part says if any of these things match up with my input packet, and you can specify a good number of them, including addressing and priorities and other things, then here are rules to rewrite that header in case you'd like to do some interesting things with it. You can duplicate it, and you can also send it to certain processing pipelines, like I'm going to insert this into a VLAN. So you can go and take your traffic and make interesting things happen. So what's an example of something you could do? Let's say that you're using uncompressed video to get a very natural, very fast, very low latency connection to somebody. Now you want to do it with 3 or 4 people. You want to do a Hangout. Well, the Hangout's not going to introduce a whole bunch of latency because you're going to send all this video to a central MCU. It's going to go and combine all those video streams and send them all back. And that's going to take up at least tens, if not hundreds of milliseconds. What you could do is you could arrange for each participant in the video conference to have OpenFlow programming that says duplicate my packet at the ideal set point in the network so that it branches and gets double copies, triple copies for everyone who's a member of that Hangout at just the right time to optimize network bandwidth. So if I'm hanging out with 2 people in San Francisco, it only sends 1 copy of the packet all the way to San Francisco, and then sends 1 copy to Will, and sends another copy to Ben in San Francisco. And because it didn't go to an MCU, I don't have the latency of combining the video with an MCU. So the programming you can see is it's a tree coming out from my source, and if I've got n people in the video conference, I've got n trees. So you just write the code for these n matching rules for each of the switches, and now you've got a way of having very low latency multi-point video.
All right, we're just past 7:30, and I want to be respectful of our panelists' time, and also hopefully come back to business again. I've got a couple other things that I want to kind of ask and to kind of gauge the temperature of the room to see where you want to go next, and talk about some ideas that we have. software side, and how do you go network side? This is one thing that, and maybe that's not a valid question, but let me try it and see if it works. So software, raise your hand. And network? Okay, so we're pretty heavily tilted towards software, and that's one of the things, one of the kind of gaps that we were hoping to address is that there are a lot of software people those are two different worlds that don't always connect well. And that in this world we tend to focus more on the developers, but the network people are left out. How many people are like with a startup or an entrepreneur? And how many people are with an enterprise, large corporation? Few. So this is another area, right? And it makes sense that we have a small network group and a small enterprise group because those things are kind of affiliated. But I think one of the things that we think would be of value is to get more enterprise and network people into the conversation. Because I think that can help spur some of the collaboration we're looking for. So as you think about this and try to enlarge this community, encourage you to reach out to that. How many people are with universities or academic students? Which is another, I mean, from a US Ignite perspective, I found that a lot of what they do is academic, and another kind of interesting gap that exists is that there are very few customers right now for gigabit applications, even with all the test beds that Glenn talked about. If you're an entrepreneur, you're not necessarily developing something that you're going to launch next week because you're just not going to make any money. So a lot of this, how do we sort of start the conversation about how you can make money and how you can use some of these things, but still keep in mind there's kind of an academic element to some of this. And how many government people do we have? I did. Thanks for coming. So, Glenn, you're going to be here next month, yes?
I am, on the, what is it, 17th?
Yeah, so our next event will be a dual event with the Google Developer Group in preparation for our November hack event. So our hope is to pull some teams together in the next 3 or 4 weeks and really focus and spend some dedicated time to prep for what might amount to a code sprint or something over the weekend of November 1st or 3rd with the goal of developing a pilot that can be launched later this year, more likely early next. So more info on that soon. Definitely encourage you to come to that. I'll probably send out, or maybe somebody else will send out a feedback form because we'd love to hear back. And let me just open it up right now. So if anyone would like to make a comment about what you would like to see us do, if you thought this was valuable, how you would like to move this conversation forward, because this is really designed to be a forum for people who are interested in this, kind of get that there's something here, and as much as we can provide help to kind of move that forward. Does anyone, did you find this valuable?
Hey, Aaron.
Yes. Will.
I thought, as much as it's amazing for us to be able to remote in and kind of experience this, having the room where everyone's facing one direction makes it hard for people to talk to each other. And I feel like you guys are really going to benefit by talking to each other about what you're working on, what you care about, and where the bottlenecks actually are when you suddenly remove bandwidth as a limitation or compute as a limitation. So maybe having a remote person is not the best way to do that. I don't know. That's just a thought that occurs to me. Plus, we can't drink the beer. It's totally unfair.
Yeah.
Well, this is why I totally look forward to October 17th, because I look forward to going and talking to you one-on-one and having lots of great conversations.
And we also have DOS or Deep. You want to talk about
What I was thinking that usually the software developers, these guys are all expert at doing stuff. I'm not saying in general, but often do not know about what they can get most out of the network. So we have Victor, my colleague, and myself, we are network researchers. We can help you guys by giving some tutorial-oriented talks, saying, look, this is exactly, where exactly, for example, multi-pipe will help. Those kind of things, you can be more, interactive form or something, and sort of take the advantage of what you can offer. the app developers, because what I have known is that the app developers knows a little bit more about the network things. They're the better ones because they did the last bit squeeze out of the network. So
That's a great point.
So and we'll be very happy to sort of go into some tutorial and people over this.
Terrific. Yeah, so please feel free to email me. I think, is the website? And what is it? Is it 1billionbits.com? Terrific. The number one or the word one? I think it's the number one. Yeah, so you can contact us there and give feedback if there are things that you want to see, if there are questions that you have, please send them to us so that we can design programming that is the most useful. But to Will's point, this is much more, and in the future will be much more about fostering a conversation than a lecture. Again, thank you all so much for coming out. We've got a really exciting opportunity here, and we're excited to make the most of it. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Brad.